Pablo Navarro is a software engineer based in British Columbia, Canada, working with Rewiring America and the Act Now Coalition in data modeling and communication for climate change. Previously, he worked with the Act Now Coalition in data communication for COVID, where he was part of the team that created covidactnow.org. Pablo is a published author on data visualization. His book, Mastering D3, is a comprehensive reference on creating engaging visualizations and interactive maps for the web. He holds a master's degree in applied mathematics and statistics from the École des Mines in Saint-Étienne in France.
Yes,
French is, well, I wasn't expecting that. Welcome, Pablo.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to see that all this work that we're doing in policy and data is actually happening on the ground. And the thing that we're going to talk today tie very nicely with what David and Laz were just talking about. So yes, I'm originally from Chile, but I live here in British Columbia, so I might use some metric units from time to time, although I try to convert. I'm working with Rewiring America, a nonprofit focused on solving climate change by electrifying the economy, mostly by working in policy and data. Today, we're going to be talking about residential electrification. We'll start by providing some context into our policy work and sharing the details about our model and how we calculated all the savings that we could achieve by electrifying. We'll share at the end, well, everything is available in rewiringamerica.org, so you can go reference there or just reach out later if you want the materials or data. So let's start by talking about residential electrification. The household report published by Rewiring America in July last year shows that 42% of energy emissions are controlled by decisions that we make at home. Emissions such as the kind of car that we drive, or how we heat our homes, how we heat our water, what's the fuel that we use for cooking. All these decisions have an everyday impact on the environment, even though we only replace these appliances every couple of 7, 15 years. We can eliminate 100% of these emissions if we replace our appliances that use fossil fuel, clean, more efficient devices that are already available. This is good news, except that for this to work, we'll need to switch all of them, right? This illustration shows something that similar to what David was showing, a house that is using heat pumps, solar rooftop. We have electric vehicles, chargers, and the breaker box that David also mentioned, which is the kind of control panel that allows high load devices to work. So the benefits of electrification are of course, they reduce emissions, but also can create millions of local jobs, right? For doing all these retrofits, we need technicians to go to our houses and help us implement all these replacements. Families can save thousands of dollars on energy bills every year. And even better, we don't have to change our lifestyles, although we probably should. We can have the same level of comfort that we have today, just having much lower emissions and using a lot less energy. Replacing these appliances, as Lance was also mentioning, has a huge upfront cost, and not everyone can afford to make this kind of investment. Low-income families don't have the privilege of buying an expensive appliance today and just wait for years for the investment to pay off. With the savings, they need to make ends meet every month. Equity is one of the most important guiding principles that we follow for policy and modeling, and that's why we focus a lot of our energy modeling in calculating savings. The policy framework has 4 main components. First, we need to make the switch affordable for everyone. Every household, especially low and moderate income families, should be able to make this transition. We propose rebates and low-cost financing to reduce the cost of replacing these appliances. Ideally, the appliances should be manufactured in the US. We need to make sure that the cost of purchasing these appliances and installing them is on par or lower than the fossil fuel counterparts. Local workers should do the work of electrifying the economy. We'll need the technicians to install the devices, but also people to work across the entire supply chain, including financing, selling, manufacturing, transporting all these devices. And finally, we need to make electrification simple. there is like building regulations and codes that sometimes they don't make it easy to like electrify some parts of that. Based on our data modeling, we developed this proposal for federal rebates, which we published in a report co-authored with the Center for American Progress. This rebate for heat pump heaters, water heaters, industrial cooktops, and the breaker boxes that I mentioned earlier will create cost parity between the fossil fuel counterparts and modern efficient counterparts based mostly on heat pumps, so that every household can afford to choose clean technologies at the end of the lifetime of the current appliances. The proposed program is now the Zero Emissions Home Act of 2021, legislation that the Senator Martin Heinrich of New Mexico introduced a few weeks ago, with 11 Senate co-sponsors and the sign-on of over 200 organizations so far. It's currently part of the budget reconciliation being negotiated by Congress. So to support this policy, we built a detailed model of residential electrification, focusing on heating appliances such as furnaces, water heaters, and clothes dryers, which are responsible for 95% of the residential emissions. The energy needed to heat a house varies widely across the country, right? Climate conditions are an essential factor, but also local fuel prices, energy prices, both for distribution and generation, are different from place to place. So replacing furnaces and water heaters with heat pump equivalents won't have the same effect everywhere. We wanted to have a clear picture of the consequences of actually doing this in terms of energy emissions, energy cost and potential savings, and energy consumption. Another critical question is whether or not replacing all these heating appliances is a viable option everywhere. We didn't know that for sure, right? Like if a place is too cold, maybe one heat pump is not going to be enough. So we wanted to go and make sure by calculating this at a very granular geographic level. And finally, we also wanted to know what the impact will be for households of different income brackets, again, particularly for low and moderate income families, and how they will benefit from this program. So to answer these questions, we need to calculate three main things. First, we need to know what is the current energy consumption. So we need to know how people heat their homes, how much of each fuel type that they use, as well as knowing the local energy prices and the grid mix, right? How energy is generated on every location. Second, we need to generate, estimate the energy consumption using heat pumps instead of the current appliances. This is a bit more challenging because heat pump data is sparse. Like there's not that many measurements of actual heat pumps working across the country. So we had to simulate consumption by using weather data and heating needs for every place that we want to make these calculations. And finally, if we have these two pieces of information, we can calculate the difference between the two scenarios, right? We have current consumption, we can subtract consumption with heat pumps, we see the difference, and we can summarize the results. We're going to go and describe the model now, but before we do that, we're going to start by like a couple of like simple or I guess like basic calculations that we are going to repeat over the presentation. So it will be calculating emissions and energy cost. So this is my electricity bill for June. My energy supplier, BC Hydro, is telling me that I use 286 kilowatt hour during the month of June, and that 1 kilowatt hour cost a bit over 9 cents. Multiplying these two amounts give us $26.9. There are other charges that are not important for discussion, but it's interesting to see that there's a second bracket where the price by kilowatt hour will increase by 50% if I go over a certain threshold, which I did not for this month. When we're doing energy calculations, it's useful to have everything in the same units. So we can compare propane, natural gas, electricity. So a liter of propane is equivalent to a certain amount of energy. We can use that to calculate the price of a unit of energy as provided by propane. So energy, like fuel amounts, are going to be transformed to kilowatt hours, even if the person buying the energy will be buying gallons of a certain fuel. And energy prices the same. We're going to transform all of that to dollars per kilowatt hour in our calculation. Calculating CO2 emissions is really similar. We multiply the amount of fuel that we burn by the carbon emissions per unit of fuel burn. Again, we convert to energy unit to make them easier to compare. It's also important to know that electricity can also generate carbon emissions, right? If the energy is generated on a coal power plant, we'll get 1 kilogram of CO2 per kilowatt hour. In a natural gas power plant, we'll get 0.4 kilograms per kilowatt hour. In different places, different places can have different factors of emission for electricity, depending on which percentage of each type of energy, each type of power plant is providing their electricity. The chart on the right here is showing electricity generation by source across the entire United States. So as you can see, the brown part is electricity generated by coal, and is decreasing recently, but natural gas and renewables are increasing. So there is a similar chart for every place in the state, and the number of how much CO2 emissions will be generated by kilowatt hour will change from place to place. So let's start calculating the current energy consumption. I'm going to use furnaces here as an example and not show the other devices, water heaters or clothes dryers, to make the calculation simple. And I'm also not going to show the income brackets, again, to save space and make the discussion a bit simpler. So the first step is to find out how people heat their homes in every location. We combine data from the American Housing Survey, American Community Survey, and the Energy Information Administration to estimate how many households use each type of fuel for heating on every census tract. So a census tract is a really small geographic division, is a group of, let's say, 1,000 to 8,000 people, so it's fairly granular. In this table, I have as an example here, this is data from Island County in Washington State. I went there before the pandemic, it's beautiful. So here we have 15,000 households using resistance electric for heating, 5,000 using natural gas, 700 fuel oil, and 8,000 using propane. So we have a similar table for every device and for every census tract in the country. Now that we know how many houses are using each type of fuel, we need to find out how much energy are they using, again, per fuel type. So the Residential Energy Consumption Survey from the Energy Information Administration provides the average energy consumption per heating, per fuel type, and end use, in this case, heating, for different census regions in the state. A census region is a big division, but it more or less match the heating needs, or I guess you could count the climate. So they are representative enough of how much do you need to heat the houses in all those divisions. The data sources I have mentioned so far provide also a lot of additional information, and they're not all divided at the same level of granularity. So again, I'm showing these tables as an illustration. So if you go to the site, you're not going to find this exact table, just something that after some combining data sets, cleaning up and merging them, you would get something like this. We can now use the energy prices for each fuel type, also provided by the Energy Information Administration, and use them to calculate energy cost as we did with my electricity bill, right? We can do that row by row here, multiplying the energy amount used by every fuel type by the local energy price, and that gives us the total cost per household. So in this case, in Island County in Washington State, households using resistance electric will use for heating close to $400, whereas the ones using fuel oil will use like $1,200 a year for heating only. Emissions, we can work that out in a similar manner. We get from the Energy Information Administration the emissions per fuel type for each place, including electricity, right? We multiply row by row the energy amount and the emissions by unit of energy to obtain the total emissions per household that we can attribute to heating in every census tract. The final step of this calculation is just multiplying the number of households by the energy cost per fuel type, which gives us the total cost for the entire census tract or county in this case for that particular type of fuel. So in Island County, the total cost on heating for households that use electricity, resistance electric devices is almost $6 million. For natural gas is $2.5 million over the year. The calculation for heat pumps is a bit more complicated because the coefficient of performance, or COP, depends on how cold it's outside. The COP is how many heat units in kilowatt hour can a heat pump deliver inside the house for each unit of energy. The COP can be more than one because heat pumps move heat instead of generating, as probably most of you already know. Here we can see the COP curves of several heat pump models. One is minus 30 Celsius outside, which is minus 22. I found that out. The heat pump will deliver 1.2 units of heat inside the house for every kilowatt hour used. But if the temperature outside is 15 degrees or 59 Fahrenheit, the same heat pump will deliver about like 3.5 kilowatt hour of heat for every 1 kilowatt hour used. So the performance of the heat pump change like sharply with temperature. So we cannot use a constant value to estimate the annual energy consumption. We're going to use this chart in like 2 more slides, so keep this a bit in mind. What we can do though is, now that we know that the COP coefficient depends on the temperature, is just find a data set for temperature, right? So NASA provides measurements of temperature everywhere, every half an hour, going back to decades. The MERA2 datasets have this like half a geographical degree granularity, so it's one measurement every 55 kilometers or so. So this little table of temperature here is what you will obtain for a single location. I exaggerated, of course, the differences in temperature to make the point discussion a bit easier to follow. But basically, we have giant tables of temperature everywhere for every half an hour. So now we can go back to this COP performance curves that we have from before. And since we know the temperature everywhere, we can calculate the actual COP of our heat pump models during that point in time. And the only thing we need to calculate the energy consumption is how much heat is needed inside the house for that temperature or location. So we refer back to the current energy consumption data, which is also from the REX dataset, to get this like heat needed amount, and then we just make the division. Heat needed divided by the COP give us the energy in kilowatt hour used on each half an hour period. And to get the annual energy consumption, we just like add all this 30-minute interval up, and we get to the total for that specific location. We're now at the final stage of the model and can start answering our question, like how much can families save if they switch to heat pumps, how much CO2 won't be emitted, and total energy consumption. We can also use other data sets to derive additional information, such as how many jobs will be created if we replace the appliances, and what will be the impact of reducing the emissions for public health. So I'm going to start like sharing our findings. Again, this is all in our website if you want to go and refer to that later. So first, let's talk about savings is one of our main um, goals. According to our model, 85% of the households in the state will have lower energy bills if they switch to heat pumps. The total savings add to like $37 billion every year. Another interesting finding is that
I just want to just a note for my own sake and everyone else. This is a super important visualization that you're offering, and it seems to confirm what the Sierra Club found. Is that correct? No, sorry, ACEEE. Steve Nadler, like in 2018, did a study very similar to this, and published state by state. And I just want to applaud you for consistency, you know, like peer review moment here. Like, good job. This is such a great graphic.
Thank you. Yeah, so this chart, what we're showing here is the percentage of households that will be saving if we were to implement this program on every county, right? We did like a county level analysis. So dark purple, maybe the legend is too small for people to see in the screen. Dark purple is 80% or more, and the lighter shade of purple is less than 20%. So the other thing you can see here is that the lighter colors tend to go to the north, where it's colder, because the heat pumps are not as efficient there, right? Another important finding is just the size of the fines per family. So households that use electric resistance, fuel oil or propane, which is about half of the households in the state, 64 million, save the most, an average of almost $500 per year. The households that use natural gas, though, they 67% also save, but much less, in the range of $10, $30 to 100 and some, but not in the same order of magnitude that with other heating technologies. And this is because of in many places, the price of natural gas by unit of energy is relatively close to the local price of electricity. Natural gas is cheaper in some places and more expensive in others. And because of the decreased efficiency of heat pumps in really cold situations, that tilts a bit the balance in the favor of natural gas sometimes. But the heat pump technology, of course, keeps improving. So we expect this to change in favor of heat pumps in the years to come. Going back to equity, we wanted to know, and that's why we did all this calculation by income bracket, is will this benefit low and moderate income families? Out of all the households that save money, 44% are low and moderate income, and the average savings range between $377 and $493. Again, the main difference is natural gas versus non-natural gas usage. And going back to carbon emissions, right, which was I guess, like one of the initial motivations, we found that implementing this policy will reduce CO2 emissions by 240 million metric tons every year. But more importantly, this residential electrification work is critical to get to net zero, because just cleaning the grid will make emissions stagnant after a while if we keep using natural gas and other fossil fuels at home. There are other benefits too for the economy. For example, replacing all these appliances will create 460,000 installation jobs across the country during the duration of the program. And these jobs, of course, are local and cannot be outsourced. The person like going to your house to make all these upgrades needs to be wherever you are living. 80,000 additional jobs will be created in manufacturing, assembling, and the supply chain of the new appliances. And from the size of the investment required and statistics like gathered by economists over the years, we know that these additional jobs and will generate 800,000 indirect induced jobs, which are like, truck drivers, people manufacturing these appliances, mining to get the materials, and the induced jobs are like jobs that will be created by the initial workers spending money in the economy, coffee shops, getting haircuts, transportation, all that. And on health, reducing residential emissions will reduce the risk of child asthma and reduce thousands of premature deaths attributable to carbon emissions. The studies for like indoor pollution are not that clear. I mean, they are not that precise, and there is also outdoor pollution. It's really difficult to make the break between these two things. But given the size of the reduction on carbon emissions, we know is significant. So yeah, just want to mention that we have all these published in our website. In the first page, bringing infrastructure home, we have all these reports at the state level and congressional district, as well as the national overview of all these findings. So if you want to see how your state is doing, will do with this appliance replacement program, you can go there and check it out. And we have an interactive version as well in map.rewiringamerica.org. We are doing some additional work on that to make all this calculation a bit more explicit and show the benefits, but you can like go and explore the map in more detail over there as well.
All right.
So, yeah. Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Caillou's son also would like to, Pablo, they write, Pablo, I really like the US map showing the household savings. Would you mind pointing me to the source so I could cite it in the future?
Yeah, it's you can go to rewiringamerica.org. Just like click around, you will find it in map.rewiringamerica.org. That gives you the full map as an interactive piece. Loading here. Yes, and you can navigate to like specific states and see how many households are LMI that are saving and get a more detailed picture. You can even go to the county state if you want and get the stats at a really granular level, see the appliances. Yeah, so it's all available there. There's a link on the main Rewiring America website too.
The California analysis is fascinating. Jose Torres, who's on deck here to be the next presenter, is the decarbonization director for California. Could you show the California map there? Because it seemed like most of it was, at least the rural areas were dark blue, but also the urban areas. Like
yeah, that's another thing that we found interesting, that the households that save don't necessarily concentrate on urban areas or rural areas. It has more to do with the cost of fuel. So yeah, it's a good news. Everyone will save. And that's also why we decide to show in this way the percentage of household savings, not the number of household savings, is just to make it a point on how inclusive this will be.
Excellent. Thank you so much. If you don't mind addressing any further conversational pieces over in the chat, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Welcome from Rewiring America. It was a pleasure to get to connect with your organization more through this discussion. I look forward to working with you in the future. I'm volunteering to work on one of your next publications as a peer reviewer. It's a terrific opportunity.
Nice. Thank you.